Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session. So, we are going to start with the Chef today. Chef is our configuration management tool, and we already discussed about a brief why we have to use a configuration management tool in our production environment. Okay, all right. So, if we talk about the Chef configuration management tool has been written in the Ruby and the Erlang languages. Okay, so these are two very powerful languages, and Chef uses both of them to automate all the stuff that we or the configuration that we provide in the Chef. Okay, so you will find that the syntax uh, of the dynamic values, like dynamic variables, which the Chef resolve, is very closely related to the Ruby. Okay, and we are going to discuss about them in details during our session. Okay, so we will be writing some of the Ruby syntax as well. Okay, no, though not very extensive knowledge of the Ruby is needed, but it's very similar to that of the Ruby. Okay, and using Chef, you can manage any type of the system. It has been the Chef client can run on both the Linux based system as well as the Microsoft Windows based system. So if you are using the Chef as a configuration management tool, so it can work in both the type of operating system. So you can automate any of the task over these operating system. Okay. So initially the Chef 11 was released. Now the Chef 12 has also been released, and they are working on the future versions of the Chef as well. So it continuously gets updated. It gets more components, so it's really necessary to keep yourself updated with the Chef because there are always changes happening. Like if you see the Chef 12 version, they have introduced the Chef DK, that is your Chef development kit, which was not previously available, and a lot of things changes with Chef over a period of time depending upon how they the further development is taking place. So some of the things that you are initially going to learn, it might get obsolete at a later period of time. Okay, so it is necessary to continuously update with the Chef. Now any for any system that you have automated with Chef, they can be a Chef can be used in a cloud as well as your internal data center, then your virtual machines, or even in any of the uh, private cloud environment that you are having. So you can automate any kind of uh, operating system like CentOS, RHEL, Debian-based systems, AIX-based systems, Solaris, Microsoft Windows. So if you are even having a combination of them, you can easily control these systems through the Chef client. Chef client will be able to run on it, and you can easily manage the configurations with your Chef master. Okay, so in Chef we are having a concept of a master, so where we are going to push all our configurations, and then wherever the Chef client is running, that is the Chef agent. We should be able to control that node, and whatever changes that we want to apply, we can apply to them. Okay, so Chef supports different types of operating system and even the different environments, so you can put Chef anywhere on your cloud or on your on-premise data center as well. Okay, and standalone configuration of the Chef, known as Chef Solo. Okay, it's also available. The problem with the Chef Solo is that in this case the Chef is not very highly available and not very much scalable. So this is a limited approach to the Chef in order to learn something when you are not having large number of nodes to be managed. So we are not going to cover the Chef Solo in more detail, but rather we are going to use the hosted Chef Enterprise to perform our lab in which case the chef server will be hosted by the company Opscode, which has created the chef. Okay, and we are going to use their chef server. Okay, now the advantage of such a hosted chef server is that you don't have to worry about the uptime of the chef server. It will always be available, and you can go ahead and use the chef up to like 10 nodes for free in a hosted chef enterprise. Uh, then there is a enterprise version of the chef which is available for the organization. So if they are buying the license, then they can deploy the chef in their own environment as well. They can create the chef server. Okay, and then all the functionalities which is available in the hosted chef would be available in their organization as well. But in that case, they will have to manage the availability of the chef server themselves. Okay, and chef server should always be available, because if chef server is not available, then the agents which are working, you might not be able to introduce the newer change in your environment unless and until your chef server becomes available. So any of the build releases, configuration management changes, anything that you were pushing to your environment, that will no longer work. Okay, so that's why the availability of the chef server matters, and you would see that many of the organizations who have implemented the chef have implemented the hosted version of the chef. Okay, AWS also has its own implementation of the chef with the namely Opscode. Okay, Opscode is a specific service in the AWS which has been little bit tweaked so that Chef can be run in their environment, and that's fully supported by the AWS as well. So you can directly use the Opscode as well. Okay, it's Chef in the backend. Okay, so here is the overall architecture for the Chef, and all the so let's go through this architecture in more detail. Okay, so very first thing, we are having a workstation. Okay, now what is a workstation? See, whenever you are going to work in an on chef, then you need one place where you are going to create all your configuration. Okay, now you need a place where you can create cookbooks, recipes. Now what are cookbooks and recipes? We are going to discuss that in more detail, but for now you can just think of it like whatever automation that you are writing in the chef. Okay, all that automation, you are going to create the cookbooks and recipes which holds the configuration for the chef. Okay, and uh, this workstation, okay, is the place where you are going to work maximum time, and day in and day out you are going to put all this configuration in the chef workstation only. This chef workstation can directly communicate with the chef server. Okay, it can directly communicate with the chef server using the knife. Okay, so knife is what is knife, how it works, we are going to deal with it in more detail later. But for now, you will just understand this, that you are going to have a workstation where all the configuration would be available, and then with the help of the knife you are going to push all these changes onto the chef server. Okay, now chef server is the one which controls multiple chef clients. Okay, so these are the multiple chef clients. Chef client is a chef agent which is running on the node. Okay, and these are your actual servers. You can think of it like C1, C2, C3. Okay, C4 node, and so on. Any of the node, like it can be your Apache database, or your caching servers, your security servers, any of the servers in your environment that you are controlling through chef. Okay, would be the chef client, because those servers, apart from the web servers and database servers, chef client would also be running on those servers, which would be managing the configuration of those servers. Okay, now chef server is able to control the chef clients. Okay, chef clients are going to poll for the configuration to the chef servers, and in turn chef server is going to provide the configuration, what has to be executed on that node, and what changes, how to achieve those changes. All those information will be provided to the chef client by the chef server. Okay, so this is really necessary to understand. This is the very basics, and this is the most important part. So it works like this, that you are having a workstation, okay, and here's your chef server, and then there are multiple clients in your environment. Okay, now you are, all the configuration you are going to write in this workstation. Okay, like day in and day out, whatever you have to make changes to the chef, you are going to do it on the workstation. Once you have done, you are going to push the changes to the chef server. Okay, and once you have pushed the changes to the chef server, these chef clients are going to call the chef server, and chef server is going to return them with the configuration. Okay, and this will continue for as many chef clients are there, and you are always going to work on the workstation only. Okay, this is where all the configuration is written by you. Now another thing is, for establishing a workstation, the very first thing that you need to do is to use the chef development kit, also known as chef dk. Okay, so you are going to use this chef development kit. The chef development kit comes with a large number of tools pre-built, for which you can use. So apart from that, it provides you with a integrated development environment where you can test, write cookbooks, and do various stuff within the chef using the chef development kit. So very first thing that you are going to do is like install the chef dk on your workstation. This is the starting, like without it you won't be able to do anything within the chef. Okay, so you, very first thing that you need to do is like install the chef development kit and create your workstation, because this is the place where you are going to create all your cookbooks and recipes in your environment. Usually if you see in any of the production environments, this is one of the server where all the members are logging. Okay, and they have the code in their own directory, and they this chef development kit. Okay, you would also be integrating entire code base with the git. Okay, so that the versioning is enabled in the chef, and whatever you are writing, if that works, you can keep that version. Otherwise you are going to revert back, and Git allows you to collaborate on writing the chef code with your multiple team members. So that will also come on the chef development environment. Okay, although it's not a part of the chef, but we have already covered the Git, so that's why I'm letting you know. Another thing is, using the chef development kit, your chef has receipts which holds all the configuration, and if you are editing the multiple resources, then they will come inside the receipts. Now receipts are a part of cookbook, so cookbook is, you can apply the cookbook to the different servers. Okay, once you have written the cookbook, we are going to cover that in more detail later, but for now, you can think of it like that whatever configuration you are going to write, that will come inside the recipe. But if you have, you can have the multiple recipes to be running on the server, like one is configuring the system, another one is configuring the monitor, then someone is configuring the logging, and then there is build receipt, there is deployment receipt, and so on. So if you have multiple receipts to be run, then you can organize all those receipts inside the cookbook, and apply the cookbook onto a node so that all the recipes that we just mentioned are going to run on that node, and we get the final node which is having the uh, like the final in software such as your Nginx or your database or your Tomcat installed on it. The code has been deployed on it, monitoring it is integrated in the monitoring, and the system related system hardening and the other tools have been integrated into it. Okay, this is how you are going to create the cookbooks. Next comes your food critic. Okay, food critic is the testing within the chef. So food critic and kitchen allows you to test along with the chef's spec and inspect. So all of these are basically the testing which are available, like the different kind of testing that you can perform on your chef recipes before running them into the production environment and verify that whatever configuration that you have written are actually modifying what it should be. Okay, so it's like verifying that the configuration is just going to do the changes which you are require, and no further uh, you know no further changes are applied which can break down the application. Okay, so you can do the write the test cases and even put the conditions like the initial environment, like once you have done the changes, that the changes have been implemented successfully and are working. So you can write that kind of testing in the chef as well. Apart from that, you can write your configurations inside the recipes. I already told you about the different recipe types which you can create and how you can associate multiple recipes inside the cookbook. Now, once you have written all of these things, then you can push them onto the chef server. Okay. Now, chef server is the one which is going to hold all the cookbook. So it is going to compile the code, whatever you have sent in the cookbook. So it's going to compile everything and store it so that whenever the chef client later can fetch those configuration from the chef server. Now, chef server holds your chef cookbooks, then there is your data store. Okay, uh, then chef allows you to perform searches for the node on the basis of the information, like if you are managing a node with a chef, and let's say you want to perform a query like I provide all the database nodes or all the web server nodes, then you can go ahead and make such queries in the chef, and chef would be able to provide you all that information. So the search functionality is implemented in the chef automatically. Then comes your high availability. So since we are using the hosted version of the chef, so it is highly available. The another thing is, if you are using the license version of the chef, then you can deploy the chef on the multiple resources. You can use different architecture practices like active, passive, etc. So that would again be managed, and chef will be highly available. Okay, now all the interactions that you are having with your command line to the chef are being done through the APIs. Okay, so whenever we are going to run any command, it's going to make an API call in the backend and going to modify the resources. Next comes your supermarket. The supermarket in the chef is the one like which holds the different cookbooks and recipes which has been written by the community within the chef, and you can take the reference from there while writing your own cookbooks and recipes. Next comes your run list. So run list is basically an ordered list of the recipes and the cookbooks, and in what preference manner you want to run them on the node. Okay, so all that information goes inside the run list, and through run list the chef client is able to determine like what recipes and what cookbooks should be executed on the node. Okay, that is the work of the run list. Next comes your policies. Policies are the configurations which you have to push. Okay, so you can apply certain different policies onto the node, that if such a node is there, then apply this kubuk and so on. Okay, and the chef, you will see that for authentication purpose between the workstation and the chef server, there is knife. The knife in the backend uses there is an SSH public and the private key. So knife uses this to authenticate to the chef server, and all the communication that is happening between the workstation and the chef server is secure in nature through that way. Okay, so there is a secure communication, secure encrypted communication between the uh, workstation and the chef server. Okay, now another important term within the chef is to understand that chef works on the declarative language. Now what is declarative instructions? So whenever you are writing anything within the chef, you are not going to tell the chef how to achieve that task. Okay, you are not going to tell about the procedure of the task. You are just going to define the end state, and it is up to the chef that how it achieves that end state. Okay, like for example, let's say we want to install the nginx on our server. Okay, so we are just going to say to chef that package nginx. Okay, and that's it. You don't have to do anything else. The chef will automatically determine which operating system you are running on your system. Okay, and then it's going to determine the package manager for such a system, and going to automatically use that to install the Nginx onto the system. Okay, so this is a declarative syntax where we are just declaring what should be our final state of the system. Final state, see, currently everything in the chef is a state. So let's say we are having a fresh server and nothing there on it. Okay, so that is the current state of the system. Now if we wanted to install the nginx on it, then it becomes the another state. So the desired state in this case is that nginx should be installed on the server, while the current state of the system is that there is the nginx hasn't been installed on the system. Now the chef will work on this state only. So the goal of the chef will be for right now to install the nginx. Okay, and uh, whenever we are going to write the configuration, we are just going to declare that you have to install the nginx, but we are not going to tell the chef how to achieve that state, that is how to install the nginx. Okay, that is something which chef will automatically figure out, that how it has to install the nginx. And for that, the chef basically uses what we call attributes, uh, and on the basis of that attributes, chef is able to determine whether what is the current state of the system, and whether the changes have to be applied to the system or not. Okay, to achieve the desired state. Now there's an important term over here known as idempotency. So what is idempotent? See, once the changes has been done by the chef client onto the system. Okay, so let's say we run the chef client and it has installed the nginx now. So our system will become idempotent now, and we can keep on running the chef client again and again and again, but it will not be having any change on the system, and nothing is going to change, and the nginx will continue. You can keep on running it. So this is known as idempotency. That is, once the changes has been applied, so you can keep on applying, running the chef client again and again, but that won't be having any changes onto the system. Okay. And then chef can be used on the physical machine, virtual machines, even in the network devices, wherever that you can run the chef client, you can run the chef as well. Okay, so you can control that device through the chef server. Okay, if you can run the chef client, then you are able to manage it through the chef server as well. Sanjay, you are not able to see this slide. Okay, let me check. So what exactly are you seeing? Uh, this chef architecture should be visible to you, right? See, there might be some issue on the chef end, but the speed of my internet is quite good. We can check that out as well. Let me clean this. Sanjay, I believe there might be some issue on your end. Let's check the speed. Just it will take up just a minute. See, it's not a speed issue, if anything that you are seeing. Okay. Uh, I'm not sure. Like other people are able to see the screen, so it's not a speed issue. That's completely fine. Okay. All right. Next comes your infrastructure as a code. Now, the it's really the infrastructure as a code is a practice where you are going to manage your infrastructure uh, by turning that into a code. And there are numerous advantages of running this infrastructure as a code practices. Okay, uh, the very like just think of a situation. Let's say you are running an Nginx, okay, or you are running an Apache, and you make some changes into your web application or mobile application. Okay, now if you can apply those changes as in code, okay, and if things somehow breaks, then you can revert back to the previous version because you have integrated you because the infrastructure is repeatable now. You just have to write the code, okay, and the code can be repeated, so you can just uh, copy the code, or you can make a reference to that code in your configuration management tool, and then run it, and things every changes would be applied, so that even if we have to recreate the entire infrastructure, we are having a pre-written code for it, and once we run that code, our entire infrastructure should be up and running. Okay, the infrastructure as a code makes the infrastructure repeatable. That is, you can easily create the more servers whenever on demand you require. All the servers would exactly be alike. Okay, and it allows you to establish the uh, integrate it with the version control system, so that the errors, if you are if your system breaks somewhere, okay, you can revert back to the previous version and the things will start working again. Okay, so those are all the numerous advantages, and there are probably more advantages of the infrastructure as a code practices. Okay, whenever any company who is following the infrastructure as a code practices, then all their dev test environment would exactly be same, because they are provisioning the server from a centralized system, and then you can log into any of the hosts that would exactly be alike like the previous one. While if you are doing this manually, then there would be certain changes between the host one and host two, which can further increase the differences over a period of time, due to which there will be dissimilarities between the server, and you can get the different type of responses as well. So you will see that infrastructure as a code practices enables for a better DevOps implementation, and Chef can help in establishing this infrastructure as a code practices. Like if you will see here, so we are having the dev environment. Okay, and initially the dev environment has been created, so you are going to install the web servers, your database servers, and so on. Okay, now once this has been done, then whenever you have to recreate the production environment, then everything, see, the very first time you are going to take the time, because you are writing the configuration code, so the initial time would be on the higher side. But once this has been written, okay, then you can create the production environment in a matter of few minutes, because you have already have the code now, and you just need to change the configuration for the production. Everything else remains the same, and when you run it, so your production servers are ready. Okay, so that is the advantage of infrastructure as a code, and you will see that the more and more practices of the infrastructure as a code is being required to manage the bigger environments. When you are having a large number of nodes to be managed, then it can play a significant part, the infrastructure as a code practices. Okay, and you can define everything inside your SCM tool, whether it's networking, whether it's your configuration part, and everything would be defined in the source code, source control systems, and then you can execute them to create your infrastructure. Okay. Okay. Now, if we see a traditional approach, usually what was happening was that previously, when the cloud were not there, so uh, whenever the developers use has to create a new application, they will request for the server, and because the cloud was not there, okay, so the companies, it was a general process, like you are going to purchase the hardware, so the invoices would be generated, the requirements would be finalized, there would be vendor negotiations, so all of this can take around 30 to 45 days to complete, and then your servers will be shipped at your location. Another 15 days you are going to take for the installation and configuration of those servers. Once the server has been installed and configured, and the networking etc has been set up on those servers, then you are going to configure them manually. Okay, and that would again take like at least a week or two before you are able to configure and verify that your server has been registered with the monitoring and all. Then once the basics like the user addition and creating of the an NFS or your lyrics LVMs has been created, so the initial checks were completed. Then you are going to hand over it to the team who is managing the application part. They are going to install the Nginx, set up the database, set up the firewalls, etc. for that system, and the code would be deployed. So that will again take a month. So it will take like 3.5 months to 4 months to just complete one application delivery. And this was not the time which the application was taking. This was the time which was being taken to procure the hardware, configure it, and make it ready for your production environment. Okay, and now after the cloud was introduced, okay, so the complexity of procuring the hardware was removed. You were always having the capacity available with you, so that on demand you can create your server just and there itself. Okay, now the problem of the servers like VMs were resolved by the cloud. Okay, but once those VMs comes up, they are just the plain operating system uh, servers. Okay, they are not having anything on them. So we need a mechanism where we can automate everything. See, there are large number of tasks which has to be performed on the server before it becomes production ready. So you are going to install the Nginx, then you are going to deploy all the configuration, then you are going to open the security ports, and going to make sure that your whatever code that you have deployed is working with the Nginx. Then you are going to push their logs onto a centralized system and integrate the monitoring inside those systems. So that all takes a considerable amount of time and efforts, especially when you are working in a larger environment and you are having this huge number of systems to be managed like that. So you can't always rely on manually configuring it, because those systems are dynamic in nature. Whenever the traffic increases, you have to add more capacity to your infrastructure as well. So you will see that in order to have this scalable approach, the use of the automation even further improves. Okay, and that's why the Chef or any other configuration management tool you have to use on uh, even more in the cloud-based environments. Okay, so this was the changes that was introduced by the cloud. Now let's talk about the Chef, and let's have an overview of the Chef. So Chef comes with a large number of terminologies which you have to go through and have a detailed understanding within the Chef before you can even start working on the Chef. Okay, so Chef is having a UI where it gathers all the information about the nodes, like how much memory a node is having, what is the IP address, what is the architecture, what operating system you are running. So all that information is captured inside the Chef server automatically. So you can use it as an inventory or as your reporting as well. Okay, now you can gather the reports, generate the reports out of the Chef server using this information. Okay, another is the push jobs. So you can push any of the configuration or to the Chef client using the Chef server. Okay, and then there is a server core which can be existing on on-premise servers. So Chef you can run on on-premise or in the hosted environments as well. Okay, the hosted environments are like your cloud environments. Okay, so you can run it in your on-premise or the cloud environment. Hello. Okay, Uh, let's move ahead. Next comes your web interface. So Chef does comes with a web interface. It is having a management console where you can verify all your configurations, all the attributes, any changes that you are pushing onto the Chef server. Then you can see the changes into the GUI as well, using the management console which the Chef provides to you. Okay, and it's possible to integrate the chef with the LDAP systems on your uh, in your organization, like the Active Directory, Open LDAP, or things like that. So it's possible to secure the chef authentication with the LDAP integration. Okay, and you will see that large number of things within the chef comes from the chef development kit. Okay, and we are going to take them in very much detail one by one, like the cookbooks, roles, databags, environments. Okay, uh, so let's start with the server. Okay, so Chef server is the one where all the cookbooks, notes, receipts, everything you are going to put on the push to the Chef server. Now you are going to develop it on your workstation and then push to the Chef server. Now all the clients, that is all the nodes in our infrastructure, are going to call the Chef server for getting their configuration. That is, if it's a database node, then it will be going to make a call to the chef server in order to determine that how it can install and configure the database, how it can monitoring can be configured onto the database. And once it gets that information from the chef server, then it can run that configuration. Then the chef client is going to implement that configuration on that node, and our database node will be available for our use. Okay, so chef server is the one which holds all the necessary information, like all the configuration will reside on the chef server, and chef client is going to retrieve that information from the chef server. Okay, that's what the chef server's primary role is. Next comes your node. Okay, now node in an environment are your actual servers which you are controlling through chef. Okay, now every node in the in your infrastructure would be having a chef client running on that will be governing the node overall, how what software it has to run, what configuration, if there are any changes, any commands to be pushed. Okay, so all the nodes are going to have the chef client running on it, and those chef client will be making a call to the chef server to gather the configuration and run on that node. Okay, that is what the node is. Next comes your resources. Now whenever we talk about the resources, these are your fundamental building blocks, and this is the smallest unit. Okay, which the chef has to uh, modify to attain the desired state. For this, these are your fundamental units. So what exactly we mean by the fundamental units? See, what happens is whenever you are going to achieve any of the tasks. Let's say we are uh, going to install the nginx. Okay, so we are basically going to make changes to a packaged resource. Okay, so in order to achieve a desired state, we are going to manipulate the resources. So package, we are going to install nginx, so we are manipulating a package resource. Now, let's say we want the nginx to be configured, so we are going to manipulate the file resource. Okay, and similarly, let's say we wanted to start the nginx and enable the nginx service, so we are going to manipulate the service resource. Okay, so you see, any of the tasks that you have to perform within the chef, you are going to manipulate a resource, and uh, so that example can be like you're installing a package, or you are going to configure a file, configure a service, or and then so on. Okay, there are large number of resources. So the desired state would be achieved when you manipulate the resources in your system to achieve the desired state. Okay, that is what the resource is. Clear to everyone? Resources. Okay, next comes your receipts. Okay, if we have to modify the multiple resources, okay, if you are going to modify the multiple resources together, okay, so let's say we are going to install a MySQL database. Okay, so what happens? You are first of all going to install the MySQL, then create the database inside it, then create the users within the MySQL, ensure that the logging is enabled, slow query logging is there, and monitoring has been configured. So you are actually you are manipulating the different resources, and because you have to manipulate a different resource, so you are going to configure them inside the receipts. Receipts are the configuration, okay, for the chef, and you are going to use the receipts to manipulate different resources. Okay, so that is what the receipts are. Next comes the cookbooks. Now cookbooks are the ones which holds the recipes. Now there can be one or more recipes associated with a cookbook depending upon what you are trying to achieve with your cookbook. Let's say if you have created an web server cookbook, okay, then there would be multiple sites that you want to like register uh, in the web server. So you are going to manipulate that, then you have to push their logging, enable the logging, and optimize the various configuration in your web server. So you can write the multiple receipts for them and then integrate it inside one cookbook. Like uh, you want to configure the monitoring, you want to configure the logging, you want to configure the web servers. So you can create one cookbook and then apply that cookbook onto all the web servers with the common role, so that whenever that cookbook runs, your web server has been created. So you can apply multiple recipes within the cookbook. Next comes your run list. Whenever now, uh, let's say we are having this one recipe for OS, okay, then another recipe for installing the web server, okay, third recipe is there to forward the logging, okay, and then users needs to be created, okay, monitoring needs to be added, and so on. So how and we have created the receipts for everything. Now how do we tell a node that it has to run? First the operating system should like the dependency should be installed, then the web server should be configured, then logging should be enabled, user should be created, monitoring should be there. Okay, so this is done using the run list. Now within the run list you can add the multiple receipts. Okay, so we can do receipts 1, then receipt 2, then receipt 3. We can go on adding as many receipts, and whenever that node runs, it's going to check its run list, like what all receipts and cookbooks it has to apply to that node. And once that has been finalized with the node, then it's going to apply all those changes onto the node to achieve the desired state. Okay, that's what the function of the run list is. Next comes your roles. Now roles are assigned to a node. Okay, like you can assign a web server role. Okay, So whenever you assign a web server role, the all the initial tasks related to the web servers will be performed on that node. Okay, so automatically it's able to configure, and on the basis of role, we can group some of the receipts as well, which are going to perform the tasks which are applicable for those roles. Okay, using the receipts. So that is also possible using the roles. Next comes your search functionality. So I already told about the search functionality within the chef. Like you can perform the different searches in your environment. Okay, like identifying all your database servers. Okay, and then taking some custom action on all those databases so that all of them are compliant. Let's say we wanted to add a security user for running the security scan on all the database servers. So the one way is that we identify from the console, like AWS console, and identify all the DB nodes, and then manually create a list out of it, and then run the chef on those servers. Okay, to create the security user. The other way around is that if you that's a long process, right? Instead, what we can do is we can directly run a search query within the chef, and when we perform that search, so it will return all the DB instances to us. Once we have that list of the instances with us, we can directly execute the uh, user receipt, in which case it's going to add that security user onto the all the DB systems. Okay, so that kind of search query is possible within the chef. No, Shridhar, you are going to create the roles on the basis of what that node is going to do. Like if its node is going to act as a web server, then you can assign it the role of web server. If it's an application server, you can assign it application server, database servers, and so on. And then inside the role, you can categorize the receipts so that all the receipts which are applicable for that role can be run on that system. Okay, that way you are going to easily identify your node when you see them later in a point in time. So you can easily identify that this is your web server. The chef uses these roles to run the receipts on the server. So you can map that this role is going to run these receipts, and then once you apply the role, so those receipts are going to run on that server, like that. Okay, that is the main difference between the roles. And Nupur is asking what is the difference between the cookbooks and recipes. So, Nupur, all the configuration, okay, if you have to manipulate different resources, then you are going to write them inside your receipts. And cookbooks are like a larger subset. Let's say we have to configure a web server, okay, then it's not only that we run the web server receipt and web server is ready. No, there would be a requirement to run the logging part, logging receipt, then monitoring receipt. So you can combine everything inside one cookbook and then apply that cookbook onto that server to achieve the desired result. So that's possible with the cookbook. So we can combine multiple receipts and files, folders. We can think of a cookbook like a large multiple set, and if whatever we wanted to apply to a server, we can contain that inside the cookbook. Okay, so we are going to create different cookbooks and apply them to our servers. The general rule is that you can create the cookbooks on the basis of your services. If you are like working in a microservice kind of architecture, then you can create the cookbooks on the basis of each service, and then whenever you have to configure that service, you can use that cookbook and just associate it on those nodes, and your entire service will be up and running. Arun, it's receipts, not receipts, where we have see, this is your receipts I'm talking about. Okay, and these are used to manipulate the multiple resources to achieve the desired state. Okay, anyone else having any questions here? All right, so let's proceed ahead. All right, so this is your hosted chef. Okay, you can go to the chef.io, www.chef.io. Okay, and go to the management console. Now, this is free. You just have to sign in for the very first time. Okay, so you can sign up for the free trial of the Enterprise Chef. Enterprise, this will come with all the functionalities that an organization is having, and you can use the Enterprise Chef for up to like 10 notes for free. So you can just easily sign up for Enterprise Chef using your email without worrying about any of the charges that would be applicable. Okay, the now whenever you sign in to the chef, the very first thing is that you are going to create an organization. So what is an organization? See, organization is a logical difference or logical grouping of your resources. Uh, so like let's say you are having the different like you are having the different roles in your organization, or like you are having the different verticals, or there are different departments, like there's your engineering department. Okay, within that you are having multiple products, and both the products are now using the chef. Okay, but one product is completely independent of the another product. Okay, so instead, for signing up for multiple accounts in the chef, what you can do is you can create an organization so that the one product which product one organization is completely isolated from the product two organization. That is, all the resources or within the chef that you are going to write in the first in your first product, okay, organization of the chef. Okay, whatever cookbooks recipes that you are writing, okay, in first organization would be isolated from the second one. So our second one can't see your first one, and first one can't run your configuration in the second one, like that. Another important use of the organization, see, this is one of the approaches how you can configure the organization in your uh, environment. Okay, and then you are also having the different environments like dev, test, stage, QA. Okay, so you can create the organizations amongst them, and then you are able to isolate the chef code in each of those environments. So you can use the organizations like that as well. Okay, but whenever you start with the chef for the very first time, then you will have to uh, create an organization before you can proceed any further. And chef is going to put all your code inside that organization only. Okay, so you can create on the basis of business units, you can create on departments. If your company is having a group of multiple companies as there, so you can even create the organizations on the basis of your companies as well. Okay, and it's possible to create the default groups within each organization. Like it's possible to create the admin group, the users who are working going to work on the technology, okay, and the developers group and so on. So you can go on creating the groups as well. Okay, and this organization is only supported in case of enterprise chef. The hosted chef is not having, sorry, the open source chef is not having the concept of the organization. So what is the downside in case then? See, each organization, let's say your different departments or different products or even the companies you are working, then you will have to install, okay, different open source chef server again and again to manage your environment, okay. But if you are having the organization, then there is no need to create the chef server again and again. You can use the same chef server to manage the multiple products, okay. That is the advantage of the organization. So we are going to create a new organization when we are going to do the lab session for the chef, okay. Next comes your starter kit. Now, whenever you create an organization, the very first thing that you are going to get is a starter kit. What is a starter kit? See, and you have to copy that starter kit onto your workstation in the chef repo. So, see, whenever you have created an organization, you have to manage the configuration uh, in that organization. So you are going to create the recipes, cookbooks, etc. in that organization. And in order to do that, you need to establish an authentication between your workstation and your chef server. Okay, so this starter kit, it contains the all the things which are required for you to start with an organization. So it is having a PEM file which allows the knife to authenticate to the chef server, so that knife knows that these configurations has to be accepted by the chef server from this workstation. Okay, so when you will create download this starter kit, okay, so it will allow the workstation to communicate to the chef server using the public key files which are there. So there is something known as knife.pem, okay, and once you open that, you will find a key, a public key through which the chef is going to authenticate that workstation, that this is authenticated to use this organization, okay, like that. And another thing is, if you change the organization, okay, sorry, the starter kit in your organization, then any of the user who was previously working, then their keys would get override and they will not be able to interact with the chef server, in which case they will have to use the same starter kit again. They will have to replace the old starter kit with the new one, and then only they will be able to communicate with the chef server from the workstation. Okay, that is the main use of the starter kit. It's basically a zip file, so which you download onto your system, and then extract that zip file onto the chef server or chef workstation, sorry, and uh, then it will create a chef repo folder where you are going to create all your cookbooks and recipes, and it will be having all the keys environment ready for you to push everything onto the chef server. Okay, that is what's the role of the starter kit is. Okay, we already talked about the chef node. These are all the physical servers or the virtual servers that we are going to manage in our infrastructure using the chef, and these nodes are going to run the chef client. Okay, that is going to implement the configuration. Another thing is, because we are able to run the chef client inside the switches, routers, these other network devices, so we can run the chef there as well and control the switches and routers through the chef. Okay, and next comes your organization. We already discussed about that. Okay, so in like each node, whatever you are managing through the chef, they will always belong to some organization. You can create the organization on the basis of your environment. Okay, and you will have one or you can have zero or more roles associated with your each node in an organization. Okay, we already talked about the chef resources. What are the chef resources? So the resources are the fundamental building block of the chef, and you whenever you have to achieve the desired state, you are going to manipulate a resource. Okay, and resources can be like your package resource that needs to be installed, a service which needs to be running, a file that should be created, a cron job is also a resource, a user is a resource, and so on. Okay, so we are always going to modify the resource to achieve the desired state in the case of chef. Okay, then comes your receipts. Now receipts are there to actually manipulate the different resources. Okay, so all the resources would be gathered inside the receipts, and you are going to manipulate them with the help of the receipts, and receipts are going to implement the desired state of the system. Okay, through receipts. And here are your server resources like networking, file directory, symlinks. These are all the resources uh, that you can change in order to achieve the desired state. Okay, users, group, packages, services, file system. Okay, so what is the declarative interface for resources? Okay, so whenever we are working with the chef, so we are going to define a state for a resource, and then the chef is going to determine how to achieve the desired state of that resource. Okay, and then it's going to implement all the changes. Now you have to remember that although the chef server is providing the details of the changes, it's the responsibility of the chef client to implement those changes which it has fetched from the chef server. So once the chef client has received the configuration, the implementation of that configuration is the responsibility of the chef client itself. Okay. The chef receipts are mostly used to install and configure the software components, manage files, deploy applications, execute other receipts. Okay, so in all of these cases, you are going to associate the resources inside the run list, and then when the chef client runs on that node, then it will automatically know which receipts needs to be run on that server. Okay, and then it's going to run those receipts. Next comes, here are your example receipts. So let's talk about this receipts. The very first thing is that because it's a receipt, we are going to modify multiple resources. Okay, so here is a package resource that we are modifying. Okay, then there is a template resource that we are modifying, and finally there is a service resource. Okay, another thing is, by default there would be an action associated with each resource that we are doing. Okay, and the default action with the package resource is to install. Okay, the default action is install. So if we don't specify the action with the package resource, then it means that package resource is going to be installed automatically. So you are going to perform an action on a resource, and for the package resource, default action is installed. That's why we have just specified the package name, that is Apache 2. Okay, and nothing else. That will perform the default action of install, and it's going to install the Apache 2 onto the server. Okay, that's a declarative syntax. See, we haven't specified how to install the engine, how to install the Apache 2 and that sort of thing. Okay, so it's a declarative syntax where we are saying that we just need the package Apache 2. Okay, and then chef is automatically going to figure out how to copy the Apache 2. Okay, next let's talk about this template resource. Okay, so this is the main configuration file for the Apache web server, etc apache 2 apache2.conf. Okay, so you are if you want to manage a web server, then you are going to require to manage this configuration file. Okay, so it's possible with the chef that you are going to create in chef apache 2.conf.arb. This is basically arb is your Ruby file. Okay, and Ruby is the language which is used by the chef. So we are going to create with this extension in the chef server itself. So what's going to happen here is that we are going to create this on the chef server, and then chef is going to copy this file from here onto the during when the chef client runs, it's going to copy from the chef server, resolve all the variables. Okay, now these variables can hold the dynamic values as well, which is gathered from the attributes that we are going to discuss shortly. Okay, so those values will get resolved and get copied onto the server on the etc apache 2 apache2.conf, and then we have defined the owner of the file will be root, group will be root, permissions that are for this file is 644. Okay, so we can assign the permissions as well, and then there are variables where we are saying that it's uh, okay to override all the values. That is, it if it's getting the values from the other ends as well, other configuration, then override that value with the value that we have provided inside this file. Okay, that's why allow override all is there. And finally it will because we have right now done a change to the apache 2.conf file, that is the main configuration file. So for making those changes effective, we will have to restart a service. Okay, so instead of reloading the service directly, what we have done is we have used a notify keyword. Okay, this is a built-in keyword within the chef. What it does is that you can notify a service that there is a change in the service, so that service is automatically going to reload. Okay, this helps you to keep a track. See, whenever the nginx is going to reload or apache is going to reload, okay, so there would be active request on the server which might get affected. Okay, so you want to track those events where the reload is going to take place. Okay, and this will be logged in as a separate event in the log, that some configuration changes were there due to which reload of the server needs to be done. Okay, and this should be error free for the server to reload. Okay, otherwise it's going to go down and your website will stop serving the traffic. That's why we have notified the service. Okay, and it will perform the reload of the Apache 2 service, and at that point we have and the template resource. Next comes your service resource. Now for the Apache 2 service, we want the service to be enabled. What is enabling a service means that we want that the Apache should be coming up and running whenever the system restart. So in case a system gets restarted somehow, then when the server restarts, so Apache 2 will come up and running, because web server should be running all the time. Okay, so accidentally, if due to some issue the server gets restarted, then the web server should be up and running as soon as possible. This will reduce our downtime. Okay, and then we are also wanted to start the Apache 2 service. Okay, so this will start the service, and it also supports the reloading of the service. Okay, so this is our complete Apache 2 configuration. Here we have installed the Apache 2, we have configured the Apache 2 resource, and then we have started enabled and started the service for the Apache as well. Okay, that is your entire receipt. Okay, so anyone having any issues with this recipe? All right, so let's move ahead. Next comes your chef cookbooks. So we have already discussed that you store the recipes inside the cookbooks, and the cookbooks can contain your recipes, templates, files, and the custom resources. So, like the file that we just created to copy onto the Apache, so cookbooks can contain those files as well, templates as well. Okay, so everything will be contained inside the cookbook only. Okay, and this allows the reusability of the code. Okay, because we can keep on assigning the cookbooks again and again to different servers, so we don't have to rewrite the entire code for each server again and again. Instead, we are associating the same cookbooks to be run on different servers. Okay, and this is also increasing the modularity of the code. It makes its code modular, so you can easily create a module wise service and use this again and again to create the entire service up and running. Okay, next comes your run list. So I already talked about the run list, where you can add what all recipes or cookbooks or uh, your roles should be associated onto the node, and in which sequence those cookbooks and recipes needs to be run on the server, so that those are being picked by the chef client, and chef client knows what recipes and cookbook has to be applied to the server. So that is being achieved through the run list. All right, here is an example for you to better understand everything. Okay, so here is our chef client. Okay, the chef client is basically your end server. This is our end server. Okay, uh, it can be anything. It can be your web server, it can be your database server, or it can be your caching server, or anything in your environment which is running a chef client right now. Okay, now the chef client is going to make a request to the enterprise chef for the policies. Okay, what like it would if this is the first run, that it has to identify what exactly the role of this server is. Okay, okay. Here the role is web server. Okay, so it's going to check its. It will going to make a request onto the enterprise chef for the configuration. Now, the enterprise chef is having the different environments, roles, databases, and the policies. So it's going to determine which of the environment the server belongs to and what cookbooks or recipes or attributes it has to run. All that information will be stored inside the run list. Okay. Now, run list is having the information like what cookbooks, recipes, roles, or etc. should be run on this node. Okay, that will come under the run list. That run list will be provided back to the chef client, and here is your run list. Okay, so this is your run list. If you see this run list, it is saying that you have to apply the recipe of NTP. Okay, so you should have the NTP configured onto your system. Then it says that you have to apply the recipe of users, so the users should have the user account on your system and it should be able to log in to the system. And then there is a role of web server as well. Okay, so you have to finally configure the web server so that the users can access the web server. So once it receives this run list, okay, then one by one it's going to apply the receipt that it has received from the chef server. Okay, onto the node, and then it's going to go to the another receipt and then to another receipt, like that. Okay, this is what the role uh, of the run list is. Okay, and in the lab, whenever we are going to create a server, then we are also going to apply the run list, update the run list, and so on. Okay, for each receipts or the cookbooks that we have created on the server. Okay, guys, this is how you are going to run chef everywhere. Okay, this the same architecture is applicable everywhere. Okay, chef is going to run exactly the same way. Okay, next comes the roles for the chef. Okay, uh, so let's take a break for 10 minutes, and once when we are back, then we are going to discuss about the roles and how we can apply the roles to the node. Okay, All right, so everyone back now. All right, so whenever we talk about the chef role basically deals with a process that is exists across the nodes in an organization with a single job function. So you can have zero or more roles in your run list, okay? And whenever you have assigned a role to your run list, then the applicable receipts and the configuration would be applied whenever the chef client runs on it. It will, on the basis of attributes, it's going to determine what changes has to be applied, and then the following run list will be applied to that node. Okay. So there are different types of roles which you can assign in your chef, like your load balancer, application server, database server, web server, monitoring servers, and so on. Okay, so you can assign all these roles to your server, and this will help you to identify like what receipts has to be applied to them, okay, when they come up. Now, roles may contain the ordered set of configurations which has to be applied inside the run list. Okay, this is the list that has to be applied to the roles are called the run list. So we are going, this is an ordered way. So whatever receipt that we have first described inside the run list, that will be applied first, and then the second one, and so on. Okay, and roles can include the data attributes. So what are attributes? See, in Chef we have uh, Ohio. Ohio is basically a language which when executed on the node captures all the attributes of the node. Now, what are the attributes of the node? See, there's different information about a node, like how much memory is available, how many CPUs are there, what is the operating system we are running, what is the architecture of our system, and so on. Okay, what softwares have been installed, what is the JVM version we are running, what is the Java version we are running, and so on. So these are called the attributes of the system, and OHI is responsible for gathering all these attributes and provide it to the chef server. So whenever the chef client runs for the first time, then it gathers all these attributes, and all that attributes are pushed to the chef server so that the chef server can use them. Okay, and you can directly use them inside your receipts and manipulate the resources as and when required. So you can dynamically create your resources. Let's say that you are installing Tomcat, so you need to figure out how much memory you have to allocate. Now you can't directly hard code the memory, because it's possible that we are creating a 1 GB memory server or a 30 GB memory server. So how do you determine what value should be available inside your configuration? In that case, you can use these attributes to dynamically gather the value, and on basis of that value you can push during the runtime that how much memory should be allocated. Okay, that will automatically get resolved and stored inside a variable which you can use in your uh, receipt, and it will get resolved to the correct value. Okay, and then you may define the port number and so on inside the attributes. So it's possible for the user to pass its own attributes as well. So if you are having like the Java version, it should be passed in the form of an attribute, because it's possible that tomorrow this Java version is going to get updated. So that should be passed as an attribute inside the chef. Okay. All right. Next comes your chef search. So chef search allows you to uh, make queries directly inside the chef, so you can identify the nodes inside the different environments or on the basis of the roles. Okay, and you can even combine, you can apply the wildcard, okay, during your search patterns, and that will query for the nodes and provide all the nodes with matching wildcards. Okay, so you can find the IP address, host names, fully qualified domains name, and so on. Okay, so here is an example. Okay, where let's say we are having a load balancer. Okay, that is the HA proxy load balancer, and we have to add all the servers, that are the web servers inside that HA proxy. Okay, because HA proxy is a load balancer and we are having different web servers in our environment, so we want to add all the web servers in our environment inside the HA proxy servers. Now there can be like 30, 40, or 300, 400 web servers, so it might not be possible that we gather all these web server IPs from the management console and then create it inside the load balancer, because it would be very hectic, and you will have to at a time change the IP. Okay, so what you can do is you can create a cookbook which performs the search of us and identify all the web servers with the role of web server. Okay, this can be in the form of a tag. In case of AWS instances, you can apply the tags to the server, so you can directly query the tags with the role of a web server. So the very first thing for this receipt would be to identify the pool members that has to be the part of your HA proxy. Okay, so we have initialized a variable pool underscore members. Here we are performing a search on all the available nodes in the chef that are having the role web server. Okay, so all the nodes which are having a role of web servers will be stored inside pool underscore members. Okay, and then we have used a template resource. Okay, uh, that will uh, copy all the nodes which with the role of web server from HAProxy app lbcfg.erb file onto the etc haproxy.cfg. Okay, at this location. So this will be this HAProxy app underscore lbcfg.erb will lie on our chef server. Okay, and it will directly get copied during the time of chef client run to this location. Okay, and owner will be root, group will be root, permission will be 0644. Then we are using this variable which we gather the IP above under the pool underscore members inside the variables, and this will automatically get resolved to the IPs with the pool member IPs and unique keyword. Okay, this unique keyword will make sure that any IP that we are putting should be unique. Okay, otherwise HAProxy is going to give you an error. Okay, because you can't include one node twice inside the load balancer. Okay, so it should be unique. That's why we have used the unique keyword, and this will input all the web server IPs and register all the IPs inside the HAProxy, and then you can notify the service of HAProxy, which will restart to make the changes effective. And once this will complete our chef run. Okay, so this is how you can dynamically register all the web servers in your environment inside the HAProxy load balancer. Okay. All right, so you can download the Chef DK from the chef.io itself. Okay, the Chef development kit is available on the chef.io. You can download it for free. The current version of the Chef development kit is 2.4.17, so you can download and install. This is available to you in the form of RBN or DPKG package, so you can download them and just install these packages to install the chef development kit. Okay. All right. So whenever you are going to install the chef dk, it's going to, you can create a chef repo folder on your workstation to start the work. Another way is that whenever you download the starter kit for an organization and you unzip that starter kit, it will create a chef repo folder for you. Okay, and inside that chef repo folder, you can copy all your roles, recipes, cookbooks, everything inside that chef repo. Okay, and here is the schema for the chef repo of various files and folders which are available inside your chef repo. Okay, so the chef ignore cookbooks roles. Okay, uh, you see there is one vagrant file as well. Okay, why this vagrant file? See, whenever you are running the chef configuration, you need some VM to test out your changes. Okay, you need some VM to test the changes. Okay, before running them into the production, so you can use the vagrant to provision the VMs, and once you have the VMs ready, you can test your chef on those VMs that everything is running fine, and then push it in the production environment. Okay, that's why it has used the vagrant file as a test environment. All right. So if you go inside the chef folder, there is an org name hyphen validator.pam. This is where how your organization is validating that the workstation from which you are pushing the configuration is valid for pushing those configurations. Okay, this is how the security comes into picture. This is how your organization validates your chef workstation. Next comes your username.pam. This is your authentication key as an user. Okay, for this server to communicate with the remote server. Next comes your knife.pam. Knife.pam, knife.rb is the knife configuration file, and it basically holds the information about the remote organization, because knife is going to communicate from your workstation to the chef server. So it should have a pointing to the organization where it has to keep all the configuration code. So that information is being stored inside the knife.rb file. Okay. Okay, now Knife basically provides you with an API interface between your uh, repository on the Chef workstation to the Chef server. Okay, and using Knife, you can manage nodes. Okay, that is bootstrapping of the nodes. You can create the cookbooks and recipes. You can create roles. You can store the JSON data in the data bags, including encrypted data. What are data bags? See, there is some special information like the secrets in case of different applications. Okay, you will have the passwords and all. So it is not recommended to store the password in a generalized configuration, because you are going to push that code onto some repository, and there might be other users in your organization that may have access to those repositories, so they can read the plain text password. So instead, you store that information inside the data bags, and their chef supports the encrypted data bags as well, in which case whatever value that you store inside the encrypted data bags will be encrypted, so that chef is only able to decode those values and get the plain text itself for itself. Okay, it will not be available directly to the users. Okay, then there is you can create the environments, you can create resources, manage workstations, and even perform the searches. So you see, most of the tasks within the chef, you are going to use the knife for in any case. Okay. Okay, so what's the default location for the knife? That is inside your home directory. a hidden folder of chef would be created, and then there will be knife.rb. Okay, and here is how the knife.rb looks. So if you will check out the organization, okay, here is your organization name. Okay, this is how chef knows which organization it has to push the code, and it uses this validation PEM file for uh, validating to that organization that it has the authentication available, and to push the configuration to that organization with this the username that you have created. Okay, so these are the three important configuration for the knife.rb file. That is how the authentication between your workstation and your remote chef server is created. Okay. Okay. Now what all tasks that you can perform through Knife? You can perform Knife help list. It will list out all the tasks that you can perform through Knife. Okay, and so if you see the Knife commands, it's not always established like Knife, noun, and the verb. Okay, so whatever you are, noun is basically the command that you want to run. Okay, and so you can uh, bootstrap the nodes. We are going to see how we can use the Knife ahead. Okay, so if you see the screenshots right now, we are not having any of the nodes registered inside the uh, this hosted chef. This is an hosted chef, so you will see there is no nodes over here. Okay, nothing is here. That's why the nodes are empty. So if you want to register a node with the chef, you will have to bootstrap that node with the chef. During the time of bootstrap, okay, you are going to provide the username and password, which is going to have the root access onto that system, and then chef is going to install the Ruby and the other dependencies on that system automatically, okay, and make it ready to be as a to be managed through Chef, and going to install the Chef client on that node. Okay, once the Chef client has been installed on that node, then you can manage that node through the Chef server. So here is a command of how you can bootstrap a node. Okay, so you can bootstrap a node using knife bootstrap command. Okay, this is the command which you can use, and then you can provide the this is the IP address. Okay, or the hostname. You can provide IP or hostname here. It's up to you. You can use anyone. If you are using the host name, then you should make sure it should be resolvable. Okay, host name should be resolvable to that node IP. Okay, using the DNS or etc host entry, and then you are going to provide the SSH user, and okay, the sudo. If you want to if you are using the key file, then you can provide the identity file. If you are not having the key file and you are using the password, then you can do -p. Okay, and it will prompt you for the password onto the remote machine, and then you need to provide the name of your node. Okay, so you are going to provide the node name, which is node 1 in this case. Okay, node 1 ubuntu, and once then the chef this knife, once you bootstrap it, it will start installing the ruby onto the remote system for running the chef client, and then it will install the chef client onto the remote node, so that it can be controlled via the chef ma- master. Okay, and so every node that you are going to run, you are going to bootstrap with the knife. Okay, another important thing is that you can directly add the run list during the time of the bootstrap as well. Okay, that will help to identify what configuration that node should run on when it initially gets created. Okay, so you can even mention the run list during the time of bootstrap so that once the agent gets installed onto the remote node, okay, it's able to fetch the latest configuration from the chef server and able to apply that configuration as well. All right. So for Chef installation on a node, you need to have the Ruby language installed on that, a nice command tool for running the Bootstrap, Chef client, which will run and pull all the information from the Chef server. Then you should have Ohio. Ohio is a language which gathers the attributes from the system and pushes it to the Chef server. Okay. So Ohio is also required. All right, and here's an inside the etc chef you can find all the client uh, related information of how the client gets authenticated. Okay, uh, and it's able to download the configuration. So whatever configuration or the validation keys that we were having, the same keys are copied onto the chef client as well. And using these validation keys, the chef client is able to authenticate the chef server that it is this client is authorized to make the call to the chef server, and chef server will validate this validator.pem file and going to provide the configuration to that server. Okay, this is the security feature which the chef is having. Unless and until this client can validate the chef, okay, uh, the chef is not going to provide the config back. Okay, so this is the security for the chef client of how the chef client authenticates. All right. So let's see the client.rb file. Now, the this client.rb file, okay, it is also having the chef server URL. This is how it knows which organization the chef client needs to connect to. Okay, and then you are having a log level. So if you get into some trouble where you are not able to identify what's the issue with your chef configuration, then you can change the log level to debug, and it will provide more information about for the debugging purpose. Okay, but by default you should always run this in the info mode, because otherwise it's going to take too much disk space of yours. Okay, and going to perform too much IO on your disk as well. All right. uh, Next is now if we go to the detail, we will see that one of the node is registered. The node one with that we bootstrap from the chef is now available onto the uh, hosted chef. Okay, and if we click on the attributes, so here are the attributes for you. Okay, and although it's not that much clear in the screenshot, but it gathers all the information on. See, this is an operating system version, and then networks is there, CPU count is there, IP address is there, network address is there. Okay, so this all information has been captured by OHI. Okay, which is running on the remote system. It gathers all this information and sends out to the server on the first OHI run. Okay. All right. Next comes the node. The node which is we already talked about, the nodes are the end which are being managed by the chef and runs the chef client. Okay, and here is the architecture that we have uh, done so far. Okay, so let's go through this architecture once to understand how we are going to work on the chef. So here is a workstation. Okay, and this is the administrator's workstation. Okay, so the administrator will going to have a knife installed. Okay, this knife will helps you to communicate with the chef server and vice versa. Okay, so knife should be installed. That will be installed using chef tk. Okay, that we have. Chef tk is your development kit. Then you are going to run a git as well inside here, so that everything is versioned. And you are having a chef repo. Chef repo is basically a folder. Okay, and for managing your code, everything will lie inside the chef repo. Another thing is we are going to push this folder or the repository onto the git as well for versioning this repo. Okay, and then we are having certain settings and the cookbooks running in our environment. And once this has been done, then we are going to send everything onto the chef server, and the chef server is now going to compile the uh, changes that it has received from the chef repo or the workstation. And then there will be different servers in our infrastructure which are running the chef client, and those chef client will periodically make a request to the chef server. Okay, all of them are going to make a request to the chef server for the configuration, and once the validation happens, then chef server is going to return them with the required permission of the run list and the receipts which needs to be executed on these nodes. And these nodes can be your virtual node, physical node, or a cloud based node. Okay, and once it receives that configuration, then the chef client will run and implement that configuration. Okay, what is to be performed on the node, that information will be performed by the chef client on that node. Okay, clear to everyone? Chef setup so far. Okay, so there are only two nodes. One is workstation, another one is chef servers. Okay, and rest all the nodes are being controlled by the chef server directly. All right, so here is a problem statement for you. Okay, we have to configure a web server uh, with our homepage, and when we run the chef, so all the setup should be done automatically. Okay, and we don't we want the end-to-end life cycle for this, so that our web server page is homepage is automatically delivered when we run the chef server. Sorry, uh, when we run the chef. Okay, and we are the very first thing that you are going to do is you are going to generate a cookbook Apache. Okay, using the now this command has changed. Okay, knife no longer supports the generate cookbook command. Okay, and this has been replaced by the chef tk. Okay, so you do chef cookbook generate Apache. This is in the latest version of the chef supports this, that is going to generate the Apache cookbook. Okay, so it's going to generate the schema basically. You can think of it like the schema, how we are going to organize our code that will be generated by this command. And when we run this like this, okay, so we will be having a cookbook where we have attributes, resources, templates, all of this pre uh, created folders for us, and we can start putting our code inside this cookbook to better manipulate our cookbook and create the Apache solution for the problem that we are having. Okay, and here is inside the Apache, we have edited the receipts, and the for the under the receipts you will find that the by default the very first file that it reads is default.rb file. Okay, that's by default. So start editing this default.rb file using some editor like vi, and create your receipt over here. So here is a recipe for configuring the load balancer that will be used by the Apache web server. Okay, so first of all, we start by configuring the HA proxy. So we are having a package HA proxy. Okay, and the action by default is install. Okay, so even if we just manage, if we just write package HA proxy, by default it's going to apply the action of install on the system. And then we are having a template that we copy to the Apache HAProxy configuration file and restart the HAProxy to make the HAProxy effective. And then we restart the system. Okay, restart the service uh, to make it effective. Okay, and we are also enabling the service. And then comes your httpd. Same we are going to do with the httpd as well. Okay, so we have a package httpd. By default the action will be installed for the package resource. And then once we are done, okay, so it's going to configure the Apache as well. Okay, and you can integrate the packages. There are different packages. You can manage the packages using the uh, package manager. Okay, and then you can perform the action on the service as well. Just like the HAProxy, you can enable the HTTPD service and start the service as well. Okay, and similarly you can register it inside the HAProxy. Okay, and remember that chef follows the structure. Okay, so you will have to write the correct structure in which the changes will be applied. Okay, but in case of puppet the structure is not followed. Okay, so you will have to when we come down to puppet, then we are going to discuss how that, in that case, how those commands are getting executed. Okay. So you can create an index.html file, okay, and place it inside the Apache so that it will be get copied onto the uh, where HTML location, so that once you make a request to the web server, your HTML page is getting delivered. Okay, here's the HTML page, hello world. And once you have created your cookbook Apache, you can upload the cookbook onto the chef server using the knife cookbook upload command. This will upload the cookbook onto the chef server. Okay, and once it has been uploaded to the chef server, then any all the clients, that is chef clients, can download it from the chef server. All right, next comes your run list. So we already talked about how that we can associate the receipts and roles inside the run list, and then when the chef client runs, it knows which roles and receipts it has to run on the node. Okay, using the run list. So for adding the run list on the node, you are going to use knife node run list add, okay, and the name of the node which you want to add, or the IP of the node, okay, both are correct. And then the if it's a receipt, then you are going to say it's a receipt Apache. If it's a role, then you are going to say it's a role. And if you want to add a cookbook, then you can directly add without specifying the cookbook. Okay, so by default, it tries to say that it's if you directly add some name, it's going to look out for the cookbook. Otherwise, it's going to look out for the recipe or the role. Okay. And here is how you execute the chef client. You just go to the node and execute the chef client. So that will apply the cookbook onto the remote node. Okay. And once you are done, then it should have start delivering your web application. Okay. That is the hello world application onto that node. Okay. And here is the output of the chef client one. Okay. And you can go through it to determine when the chef is has complete running its task. Okay. And all the changes has been implemented. We already talked about the idempotence, that we can keep on running the chef client again and again, but no changes will be implemented because chef is idempotent in nature. So we can run as many times as we want the chef client, but it's not going to implement any changes. Okay. And so I will show you the output when we run the chef client, what happens. Then we are going to discuss about it. Okay. All right, so up till now, we have actually gone through how to create an Apache receipt, that is, how to install the Apache web server, enable the web server, start the web server, and copy a file, that is the index.html, into the code base. Okay, and here is a cookbook structure. Here is how the Apache cookbook has been created. So within the Apache, we have kept the receipts under the receipts folder. Files are the static files which are not going to change. They are going to be copied onto the remote server as it is. Okay. So if anyone asks you for a difference between the files and the templates, see, files are the ones which are static in nature, so we are just going to directly copy the file as it is onto the remote location. That's why we have created the file. Okay, it's not going to change. Whatever text there is on the chef server, the same text will be copied onto the remote server. That is what the files is. And if we talk about the templates differ from the files in the way that it uses the variables, and those variables can resolve to some dynamic value using the attributes, like the memory calculation that we have done for the JVM. So that is one of the way where we are going to use the templates instead of the files, because there we are going to resolve to the memory. Okay. And then we already know about the attributes, how they are gathered by the OHI, and we can pass our own attributes as well. Okay. And then we are going to upload all our cookbook onto the chef enterprise. All right, let's talk about the chef environments. We can pass the different environments into the cookbooks, and then when we run the cookbooks, we can call on the basis of that environment only. Okay, that's also possible in chef. And you can list the nodes in the knife using knife node list. It will list all the available nodes, all the servers which are registered, and having a chef client running on them. Okay. And similarly, you can list all the client nodes as well. So chef client list will list all the nodes of the chef where the chefs run. Okay. And you can show the details of node 1 as knife show node 1 will give you all the information about the node 1 node. Okay. Like the host name for the node which is being used, the IP address that the node is going to resort to, and the uh, receipts which are being run on that node. Okay. Similarly, you can also gather a fully qualified domain name from the show. So you can gather any of the individual value using the -a flag. Okay, so we already talked about the different environments in the chef, like development environment, test staging, production, and pre-production environments. All right, so that's all we have for the chef. Okay, and we are going to perform the lab for the chef. Okay, so let's have a break for 10 minutes, and once we are back, then we are going to discuss about the labs, how we are going to implement the labs and all. Okay, we can start with the lab as well, but I'm not sure if there is so much time. I'm thinking of showing you the configuration. Okay, let's take a break of 10 minutes, and once we are back, then we are going to discuss about how we are going to perform the lab on the chef. Okay, and you can raise your doubts as well. Let's take a break for 10 minutes, and once we are back, then we are going to have the question and answer round. Okay. All right. So anyone having any questions regarding the chef? Any doubts? Guys, anyone having any doubts? All right. So for performing the chef exercise, we will be needing the two VMs. Okay. Two VMs will be required. Uh, one will be having uh, 2 core, 2 GB, 2 core CPU, and 2 GB RAM. Okay. And another one VM should sorry, this is for one VM, not two VMs. This is the configuration of one VM. Okay. And you should create one more VM with one core and one CPU, 1 GB of RAM. So this would be required for performing our lab session. Okay. Guys, you want to perform the lab right now? We can perform the lab right now as well, although we won't be able to complete it. Should we start with the lab now or next week? Okay. Most of you are saying next week. All right. Uh, so yeah. So Sujit, there is not much to install. Okay, there is a Chef DK RPM. We just need to install the RPM and Chef DK is done. Then we will be signing up to the chef. So it's not about the installation. The entire chef is about how you write the configuration. So we are going to take a number of examples, okay, to make yourself familiar of how to write and organize the chef code. Okay, and chef is having a little more learning curves than the other tools that we have covered till now. Okay, chef and puppet are the having the maximum learning curve. Okay, the puppet is even having more learning curve than chef. So just go through this. Okay, and we are going to perform the lab session next week. Okay. And guys, I will be traveling uh, during the next week. So probably I will not be able to take the session next week. Okay. But someone might else take one session uh, for you. Okay. Only the one session would be taken by someone else, and then I would be back. Then I will take the rest of the session. Okay. You will get a confirmation regarding that from the team. They are going to notify you about everything. Okay. All right. So that's all we have for chef. Okay. You can go through the recording once, and is the PPTs like available in the portal for chef? If not, then you can drop a mail to the support team, Cognitia support team. They will make all these documents available in the portal as well. Okay. All right. So I am going to end the session now. Okay, and we can start next in the next session, the lab. Okay. Anyone having any doubts, you can ask now, else we are done for our today's session. Thanks everyone for attending the today's session, and I will see you in the next session then. Ending the training now. Okay.